Hello, Julian. So good to see you. Welcome to Queerly Beloved.
Hi, Will. It's great to be here.
I'm so happy that we're getting a chance to do this. I really enjoyed being on your podcast a while back, and I just love how connected our work is and even our shows are. And so, yeah, this is a great joy to get to drop in with you today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Indeed. So, I always start these interviews with the same question, and it's a little bit of a creative one. So, if it's helpful, I can go first. But the question is to check in with yourself in this moment and tell me who are you in this moment, but tell me by describing a drag avatar that embodies that.
Oh my gosh, a drag avatar that embodies that. Oh, wow. Um, hmm, Drag avatar. So I don't know. I guess maybe I don't have a single drag avatar that I think describes who I am in this moment, but I think if you mixed Vita Boheme and Jackson, yeah, Noxema Jackson from Tu Wong Fu, I think you probably
Yes.
arrive pretty much there. Like kind of the wisdom of being a little older and grounded that Vita had with some of the sass that Noxie
Those are
had.
both queens from Tu Wong Fu, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, I need to rewatch that movie. It's been a while, but yes. So I'm hearing a sass and a wisdom keeper, and bringing those together in a great drag alchemy.
Yep, absolutely.
I'll take it. I love it, and it's an invitation to rewatch that movie. I love that movie, but it's been a while. Fabulous. Yeah. So I'll check in and. Oh, yeah, as we were, ready to jump on, we were mentioning how Labor Day is fast approaching and how fall's coming in. And so my drag avatar today is like a changing leaf, so like still holding on to that green, but like starting to move into those fall tones. And I'd say she's kind of like mixed in her emotions around that. There's some excitement and gratitude, knowing that the grounding and there's a certain comfort level of fall that it comes with that season for me, but also a little bit of sadness as my greenness starts to fade away. And it's funny because I'm wearing like a green shirt, and then I have some kind of fall colors on this pendant, this necklace. So yeah, so I'm kind of like a fall leaf. And if we were to put it into a queen who takes the stage, she's in a green dress that's, as she performs, slowly moving into the fall colors.
Cool. That's awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks for entertaining that question with me. So yeah, I'm super excited to hear more about your work. I didn't realize until I was researching you today that you're a human design specialist, and so I'm excited to drop in on some of that stuff too. But I'd love to start by you just sharing how you got into the work that you do.
Wow. So that's like so many people in this kind of work. I think it's been a long circuitous path. It's been a winding. So, in high school, I thought I was going to be. I originally was going to study engineering and be. I was really interested in robotics. And then
Mm.
around my junior or senior year, I got really interested in art and in particular fashion. So I
Mm.
learned to sew at an early age, made all my clothes through high school. And that's
Wow.
really what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, my father had different ideas and insisted that I go to the school where I had a scholarship, which was the University of New Mexico.
Mm.
And so, no fashion program. So I decided to be a fine arts major, and I
Mm.
studied photography, and then got out of college, and the realities of paying bills and things like that hit. And I actually went into this really new field at the time called web design. So,
Mm.
yeah, I'm that old. And spent 30 years in software engineering. And then, in human design, we always talk about around 50 is when your Chiron return happens. The
Mm.
asteroid that sort of the archetype of that wounded healer kind of comes
Mm.
back. And so at that time, I really started like looking more at purpose and what do I want? how do I want to bring meaning to my life? How do I want to flourish, especially as I move into my later years,
Mm,
and I think also turning 50 for a lot of us starts making us think about our legacy.
hmm
I'm a gay man, no children. What do I leave behind? How do people remember me if I'm not passing on children or, things like that? And so I had always been involved in queer spirituality. I had been a facilitator of workshops, founded Between the Worlds, in like 2002. So I had done a lot of that work, and I decided, this is really the kind of work I want to do. I want to work with people, not
mm,
machines. And it was an offhand comment by a friend that I had given some advice to that said, I should hire you as my coach. That made me
hmm,
go, huh, coach. I never really thought about myself that way. So I started looking into
mm,
life coaching and went and got my certification and started my business. And the rest is history, as they say. But, it was just
mm,
kind of, it was to me, it was a classic human design thing. I'm a
mm,
manifesting generator, which means I'm very driven by my sacral response. And that person
hmm
saying, I should hire you as a coach was like, yep, that's what I'm meant to do. So yeah.
mm. That's beautiful. Yeah. So you felt that immediate fuck yes, as they say.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Right in the sacral. I happen to be a manifesting generator too. And so, yeah, I'd love to ask a couple of follow-up questions. So one is around the Chiron return. So could you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, so the Chiron return. So when you're born, all the planets are in a certain position in your human design chart. And Chiron is, a large asteroid, has a lot of influence on us. And the archetype of Chiron is the wounded healer. So it's about how
Mm,
we transmute our biggest woundings into
hmm
our like power and our magic as a healer. How do we
mm,
heal other people from that wounded place that we have been in? And so the Chiron return just basically means, Chiron moves very slowly. And so right around 50 is when Chiron returns to where it was when you were born. And so it kind
hmm
of activates that like quest for like purpose and desire to like do something more like meaningful, and particularly around like healing and spirituality and those kinds of things.
hmm And where are you able to identify the wounds that you healed that have brought you into the healing that you get to offer?
Yeah, so you can always look at your human design chart at the gate, but I would say
Hmm
that some of the biggest woundings that I've dealt with, if I just without even looking at my gate, I can say like definitely there have been wounds around like masculinity and my
hmm
relationship with my father.
hmm
And for me healing that was finally coming to peace with just saying there's never going to be a relationship there,
hmm
and closing the door on that.
hmm
And then I think also, through my splenic definition of my human design, I also have an activation in the gate that sort of triggers that whole fear of rejection. So,
hmm
becoming a coach, so much of it is about being visible and putting yourself out here in this way.
hmm
And that was really difficult initially for me. I had always been pretty shy and introverted. And I
hmm
always called myself a reluctant leader, like even back when I founded Between the Worlds and was facilitating that. So a lot of that wounding was around that fear of rejection and just getting comfortable enough in my own skin and in my authenticity to be like, this is who I am, take it or leave it, So
hmm Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, let's go down the visibility rabbit hole a little bit and explore that. I mean, it's interesting. One of the things that popped out for me was you sharing that you were designing all your clothes in high school, which is so fabulous. And so I imagine in that act alone, there was a certain amount of visibility that you were claiming, but perhaps not. I want to share a little bit about your relationship with visibility.
yeah, so in high school I was designing a lot of my clothes, and but I was also like, we didn't call ourselves goths then, we were new wavers. And so
Okay.
and I hung out with the punks, and so I was in that
hmm
sort of subculture, which also kind of
hmm
created that buffer, right?
Sure.
You were the rebel and the outsider, and so it kind
Mm,
of created a safety or a wall, kind of,
mm,
that you could be visible and have that style and have your friends in the subculture appreciate it, but you weren't really like interfacing with the mainstream.
got
And
it.
so then, as I grew older and stepped into owning a business and being a coach, then it becomes
hmm
more about putting yourself out there in a bigger way. And
hmm
so that took some doing.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I was just reading. a friend of mine posting on Instagram today about visibility amongst gay men. I'll be curious to talk to you more about elder gay men and how this comes into play. But this was more directed to just queer people in general. And what it was focusing on is the shape shifting that many of us did growing up in a society where we were worried about being rejected and being outcasts and not feeling safe. And so, in a sense, the idea was that we have learned how to make ourselves invisible. We have learned how to wear masks in order to be safe. And that part of the healing and transformation process that queer folks are tasked with is finding the courage to take off those masks and to move into an authentic expression of self without the shape shifting. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it resonates with me. I mean, so much of my work is about supporting queer folks to claim their authenticity, to find it. I mean, for many of us,
Mhm.
because we've been wearing so many masks, we believe that we are those masks. And so we forget who we are. And it's a process to really deconstruct these identities that we've been using to keep us safe, releasing them and letting them go so that we can start to reveal what is underneath these masks. And that takes a lot of courage and that takes a lot of determination to be committed to finding our truth and then expressing our truth. Yeah, just curious if any of that resonates and yeah, anything you
Yeah,
want to
it
share.
totally resonates. I mean, that's so for all of us, human design, the whole process is about deconditioning, like letting go of all those
Mm,
things that were put on us, like through our growing up, through the energy of the people that we're around, the
mm-hmm,
environment, all of that stuff that pulls us away from who we really are. And it's even more
mm-hmm,
so, obviously for queer people, because there is that need to kind of hide to be safe initially.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's where some of the like misunderstandings and like breakdown in our community is happening, is that younger people have grown up in a more accepting, more mainstream thing where they feel
mm-hmm,
like, oh, it's just mainstream now, I don't have to be a certain way, I don't need queer community. But now we're seeing this backlash, and I think it's catching a lot of people off guard because suddenly they don't know how to protect themselves or be safe or be authentic in a way that still creates that acceptance for them, and they haven't built that support network, so a lot of people are kind of
mm-hmm.
having the rug pulled out from under them now.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense that because there hasn't been the same level of need for supportive community because of yeah, the acceptance of mainstream society, which it's now becoming clear that that need does exist, that that need always
Right.
will exist, no matter how accepted we are. I believe that the intergenerational connections and the coherence of a broader LGBTQ community is vital for us to be able to show up in our full power and express our full gifts. But it does make sense that because of, in some ways, the progress that we've made, it has taken a little bit of a back burner.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always important to have queer space. You
Mm.
know, our lived experience is going to be so different, and I do
Hmm.
believe that queer people have inherent spiritual gifts that
Hmm.
we're meant to bring to the world. And so we've got to like build that community first, kind of practice using those gifts and strengthening those gifts in that safe place of our community so that we can build that bigger table to let the rest of the collective in and experience those gifts as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, would you share a little more about what you think some of the specific queer spiritual gifts are, or just your ideas around queer spirituality in general? Would be great.
Well, so my ideas about queer spirituality in general is, that queer spirituality needs to be a place that celebrates who we are authentically, not just accepts it. So
Mm-hmm.
that we often hear this, well, it's accepted. Well, I don't want to
Mm.
be accepted. I want to be celebrated for who I
Mm-hmm.
am. I also think that, it needs to be sex positive. You can't embrace just part of who you are. And sexuality is a wonderful spiritual gift as well. And we need to be sure that it fits into that framework of our sacredness and our spirituality as well. So,
Mm,
queer spirituality to me is about finding your kind of forging your own path, really, in a lot of ways, finding the spirituality that nourishes your soul, but
mm,
that also like supports and uplifts you as a queer person, as fully embracing all of who you are.
mm,
So yeah, so that's good. So as far as some of the spiritual gifts, I think that most of my experience is lived as a gay man, so it may be different for other queer people and other experiences, but I think that queer men have, a great deal of compassion
mm,
when they allow themselves to. It's something that
mm,
Toby Johnson has talked about extensively in
mm,
a lot of his writing as well, is about the compassion of that gay men have. I think there's this obvious like ability to sort of balance the masculine and feminine, to find that like
mm,
logic and also that like creativity, that flow and that structure.
mm,
Like we just have that ability to kind of walk that middle road really well.
mm,
And I think that our collective can learn a lot from that. Um, and then I just think that, the creativity, the artistic vision,
mm,
a lot of those things are incredible spiritual gifts as well. So there's a
mm,
number of them, and of course, everybody has their unique expressions of them,
mm,
but they're vital and
mm.
really needed in the world right now.
Beautiful. Yeah, one of the ones that you just touched on that is really sticking out for me and resonating for me right now is the capacity to create. And of course, all people have a great capacity to create. But I do think that there's something unique about the queer lens when it comes to creation. And I think part of that comes from the fact that from a very young age, we're told that who we are and the life that we might desire from the depths of our soul is not acceptable and not good and not right. And so we have then needed to move through a portal, reject those ideas, and in turn create our own paths. And so
Mhm.
creativity is almost a portal that queer folks have needed to move through in terms of creating a life path that works for us, that resonates for us. And so I love how our creativity towards life itself is also a possible access point to creating art, creating ideas and programs, and creating rituals and stories. And I personally am. Yeah, I just got back from Fairy Camp Destiny where we put on a play, and I just started this new vocal improv class 2 days ago, and I'm just like feeling the buzz of creativity recently and wanting to give more time and energy to creativity. And it just feels like a, mm, an important piece of this time right now for us to find our way back into creativity and as an act of rebellion against what we're seeing in the larger mainstream oppressive society that we're living under.
Yeah, absolutely. Creativity, like, artists and writers, they've always been sort of activists as well, the ones really
Hmm.
pushing society in a new direction. And I just think like creativity is so unique to queer people. And oftentimes it's because, all that energy that would normally go into procreation gets channeled into
Hmm.
creation instead,
Hmm.
And so it's almost like yeah, it's like this divine impulse. It's like, well, instead of like creating offspring, we're creating art and
Hmm.
literature and music and beauty in the world instead. And I think that's a
Hmm.
wonderful way to sort of look at that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, going back to the visibility thread that we started earlier, I know that one of the things that you talk about is visibility and the challenge of visibility, particularly among gay men as they age. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that perspective.
Yeah, I think well, we live in a youth obsessed culture, not just,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not just talking about gay culture. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
overall. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
hear about like 10-year-old kids using anti-aging products and spending
Jeez.
fortunes at Sephora, and And, the queer community has always kind of had that as well, the
Hmm.
idea of youth and beauty and all of this. So it becomes easy for aging men to start to feel invisible because they no longer fit that ideal. They no
Mm.
longer get noticed as easily. And we haven't, because our community has kind of started to fragment a little bit because it's been more mainstream acceptance. Younger people are less engaged in the community. We the internet apps have kind of taken away a lot of the spaces, bars. We don't have the gay
Hmm.
bars and the coffee houses and the things that we had before. There's not really a place for older gay men to be seen. And
Mm.
there's really not a place for their wisdom and their lived experience to be appreciated. Everything
Mm.
is kind of, if when I came out, I had a lot of older friends, which was great. I learned a great deal from them, and they also watched out for me and helped
Mm.
me stay safe. But I think today now, if an older gay man is creating a friendship or with a younger person, there's this assumption that there's something sexual or that he's an old perv or something like
Hmm.
that, and it creates this sort of invisibility for older gay men as they age, and especially
Mm.
some of them that maybe have been partnered and now they're trying to re-enter dating. Like there's just so many
Mm.
challenges with that, with aging in a youth obsessed culture, that I think
Mm.
helping older gay men find that flourishing, which is a positive psychology term,
Mm.
helping them find flourishing and create that visibility for themselves is important.
Mm. Yeah, and what do you think is lost when we don't see our elders? What do you think is lost when elders do become, our queer elders become invisible?
Yeah, well, I think this erosion of community is part of it, right? Because
Hmm.
we lose our history.
Yes.
Now we're facing some of the same challenges that we experienced years ago, and who were the activists who fought back
Hmm.
against that stuff? The older people.
Hmm.
Some of them are,
Hmm.
and we're losing some of them as well, and we're not
Hmm.
preserving our history. And our history is so critical to really understanding where we've come. And history repeats itself. Maybe different tactics, different words, but it's the same bigotry, and it comes
Hmm.
back in a cycle. And we need to preserve our history so that we know, how did we handle this last time. And I think
Hmm.
I think an additional challenge there is that those of us who are growing older don't all have really great role models of even how to hold that place and be those
Hmm.
mentors to the next generation,
Hmm.
because so many of our older people were lost to the AIDS
Of
epidemic.
course. Mm. So, what are some solutions? Do you help elders address this, and in what ways can you support folks who might be experiencing this?
Yeah, so my work revolves around human design and positive psychology, in a coaching approach, and it's really about helping them find that flourishing for themselves. First of all,
Hmm.
it's about getting rid of all those masks,
Hmm.
being authentic, because
Hmm.
it's harder to be visible when you're hiding. And then it's really about, like, I think a lot of it is about how do we rebuild that community piece,
Mm.
and in a way that appreciates the wisdom of our elders, that
Yes.
appreciates that. And I think a lot of us feel, when you feel invisible, you're less likely to speak up. You're less likely to do the things that have an impact. And so once you start to find that confidence to just be yourself, to make yourself visible,
Hmm.
you're more willing to speak up. And then I think that even amplifies the visibility. People start to hear you, and they start to realize, hey, there's some wisdom, there's some value here, and maybe
Hmm.
I should pay attention.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I'm present to a elder gay man who attended one of my treats, and that was a common theme for him was that he felt like he was invisible. He felt like he would show up at spaces and no one would see him. And and I imagine that there's both things happening here. There is, yes, this youth obsessed society that has prioritized youth and focuses more on youth. And then there's also this self self-afflicted prophecy, right? When we've
Yeah,
decided that we are invisible, then we are invisible. It's like we
yeah.
put on our invisible cloak by saying that no one can see me. And I believe that in some ways, visibility is a choice that we get to, or we can courageously choose to be visible and have our voice heard and be seen, but that it's a two-way street, that
Mhm.
that elder gay men, or gay men, people in general, need to take up that space. And that is,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, a courageous act. It's not easy,
Yeah.
especially when there are forces pushing up against that and trying to make us invisible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And a lot of it has to do with the confidence piece too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Older gay men sometimes like, yeah, our culture's youth obsessed. You can definitely choose to be visible, but I also think that, as an older gay man, you can also choose to be sexy. You can
Hmm.
choose to be attractive. And I think sometimes
Hmm.
people allow the lack of confidence in that to keep them
Hmm.
from being visible in other ways.
Hmm.
They feel like, oh, I'm this old troll now, so I can't be
Hmm.
visible and share my wisdom because people won't hear it because I'm not as attractive or whatever.
Wow.
But that's not true. And that's again, that's bigger than just the queer community. That's a societal thing. I mean, look at the flack
Hmm.
Madonna has taken for being an openly sexual older woman.
Hmm.
We've got this idea that after a certain age, you're not supposed to be sexy, you're not supposed to be attractive,
Hmm.
you're not supposed to want those things. And of course, it's all bullshit. Um, we need to take that power back and,
Hmm.
show up confident in who we are. And, beauty's more than skin deep. There's lots
Yes.
of layers to attractiveness, and there's a lot of things that make a person sexy.
Yeah, I love that. And that you can be sexy and claim your sexiness without being that old troll, right? Without being
Yeah,
this skeezy guy who's trying to like get with people who aren't necessarily attracted to him. That, in the same way that a youth who is confident in their sexuality isn't necessarily trying to have sex with everybody in the room, like older gay men can also claim their sexiness and be in that power without there needing to be a story that them owning their sexuality and their sexiness means that they are trying to, uh, be exploitive to the younger queers in the room.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
You can be that. And actually, I think you're more powerfully attractive when you aren't trying to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. For the young queer or the older queer. Yeah, it's like
right,
just own who you are and yeah, express desire if it comes to it, but to do it in a way that's not attached or not trying to have something that is not aligned. Yeah,
right.
beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to switch gears a little bit and talk more about entrepreneurship. I know that we've connected as two spiritual entrepreneurs in the past on this subject, and I'm curious where you're at in your journey, your spiritual journey with entrepreneurship, or anything you want to share around that topic.
Yeah, so I think so. My journey's been interesting, and I'm currently in the process of redoing my website because I've kind of refined my own kind of work. I started out really talking more broadly about purpose and legacy and meaning, and as
Mm,
I've gotten older and things have changed in the political environment, I've
mm,
really centered more on working with the older gay men as opposed
mm.
to a wider. And I do work with spiritual entrepreneurs as well because I teach coaching, a spiritual coaching academy, and
Nice.
often end up coaching some of my students on the same issues, right? And I think that's the
Hmm.
thing about spiritual entrepreneurship. It's a lot of the same challenges. It's about being
Mm,
visible, about being who you are, and
hmm.
we get out there, we hang our shingle as a spiritual entrepreneur, and all the charlatans come out of the woodwork telling us about all the ways that we need to copy their system, be this, be
Hmm.
that, in order to be successful. And,
Hmm.
and then the social media algorithms feed us the same slop over and over and over. And it just it
Hmm.
it just homogenizes everything. And so,
Hmm.
what I'm really learning is that I've always been a pretty opinionated and sometimes tactless person. I'm a Sagittarius, so you know how we can be. And so I've just learned sometimes now I just speak my mind more freely because it's what
Mm,
makes me stand out, and
yes.
maybe the algorithm doesn't love it. Maybe, it definitely goes against what all the business coaches are telling you to do, but it's
Mm,
aligned to who I am. And I think that the
mhm.
people who need what I have are going to also resonate with that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, what resonates for me in that is this vibrational alignment. It's like
Mhm.
and it's definitely is also connected to this visibility piece, right? It's like so part of entrepreneurship is this calling in visibility, and it's also calling in truth, right? Because if we are visible but putting out something that's not truthful, then we're not going to be creating the vibration that's going to connect us with the people that we're meant to be working with. And so it's holding both of those as important and vital in how we move through the space. That we are not only being visible, but we're being visible in the deepest truth that we are capable of expressing in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that vibrational piece is so important because so many people think that they have to do entrepreneurship a certain way
Hmm.
and that marketing has to look a certain way. And you really can forge your own path if you're in that vibrational alignment and in that truth. And, if social media just makes you sick to your stomach, don't do it. There are lots of
Hmm.
ways you can be seen and heard in the market without doing social media. So, people need to do what lights them up and what they
Hmm.
enjoy because people are going to resonate with that more powerfully than if you're making yourself do something you really hate.
Hmm.
And so I think that's super important. And the same thing about the hustle aspect of entrepreneurship. We often
Hmm.
hear, to be an entrepreneurship, you got to work, 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 work. And
Hmm.
if you're doing that, go get a corporate job. You might as well because
Yeah,
you're not any freer than you were. So yeah.
totally. Yeah, thanks for sharing those pieces. Yeah, and for me personally, I find it seasonal. So, like this summer, I've posted a little bit on social media, but I've somewhat taken a break because I've been enjoying being present in my travels, at Fairy Camp Destiny, Unplugged, and I was in France for a little while, and I've just enjoyed being in my own time and space. And now as fall is coming back, I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm ready to like share my voice a little more. And what are some of the
Mhm.
things that are really juicy for me to be talking about and to be, sharing with my people? And so to recognize that uh, our our visibility access points can change.
Mhm.
We get to be in the flow of that, and that feels really important for me to be present with right now, and not making myself like wrong or bad when I'm out of that type of visibility, and recognizing that they are seasonal, these changes that I go through.
Yeah, and I think entrepreneurship is, there's an evolution that happens. Your business changes as you grow as a person,
Hmm.
especially if you're a solopreneur. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes people like I know sometimes, especially like new coaching students, they think they've got to like nail their niche right out of their certification program and
Hmm.
like that's who they are now is they're the coach that coaches that. And that's so not true because who you are today is not who you're going to be tomorrow. And if your business isn't growing with you, then you're out of alignment with the
Hmm.
truth of who you are.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it really does. Allowing for that flow also allows for your soul's evolution to be continuing its path rather than getting stuck in some kind of box. And, I got to admit that sometimes it is, I don't know, uncomfortable because there is
Mhm.
much more uncertainty. Whereas,
Yeah,
with a corporate job, you know what you're doing and you mostly do that for a long time. With
yeah,
entrepreneurship, it's like you know what you're doing now and then it changes and you have to go with that flow and trust that that change is going to be a change that creates reciprocity of service and return. And it's
yeah,
yeah, it's they both have their own challenges and perks. But I
yeah.
do think as someone, who is also on this path of evolution, it's like the solopreneurship path, the entrepreneurship path can really serve that journey as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think it's such a misconception that like working a corporate job is more secure. You know, I spent
Hmm.
30 years in tech, and the tech industry, like the average tech worker experiences at least three layoffs over the course of their
Wow.
career. So,
Hmm.
you know, not any more stable in many ways.
Hmm.
And of course, with like AI and other things disrupting
Hmm.
like the hiring process, all these
Hmm.
things, you know, I do think that entrepreneurship is a really important path, and I think that it's
Hmm.
probably a right path for many more people than realize if they allow
Hmm.
themselves to really trust themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. Perhaps this can be an invitation for those on the fence who are considering moving into their own space. Yeah. Anything else you want to share about human design? Going back to that topic, it's was noticing that you are a 5-1 Manny Jen, and I'm a 4-6. Do you happen to know any distinctions between those, or what some of our similarities might be as Manny Gens?
Well, as manifesting generators, you know, we're driven by our sacral response, but then we move quickly into initiating action once we respond to things. So that's
Okay.
what manifesting generators. So we're designed to actually manipulate quantum time by finding
Mm.
the most efficient path to mastery. So that's
Mm.
why manifesting generators tend to be multi-passionate people, and they tend to
Mm.
pick things up, and then when they're done with them, they set them aside. So, you
Mm.
know, I'm someone who gets a new hobby. I buy all the supplies. I go hard on it for like 6 months, and then I may never do it again.
Mm.
And that's a very typical manifesting generator pattern to just have lots of interests and explore them. And they move very fast because of that. They're very creative and very quick moving people.
Which, just
So
briefly to interrupt, is very
yeah,
aligned with what we just talked about, where
yeah,
our practices evolve. And yeah, that's funny.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. It's absolutely that way. And yeah, the manifesting generators, they just, you know, they skip steps, they
Mm.
experiment, they kind of
Mm-hmm.
find their own path, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
designed to create better efficiency for
Mm.
the whole collective. And so that's kind of their purpose to serve the collective is to do that and explore that. So as manifesting generators, we have a lot of that stuff in common, you know, the sacral response, the fast movement, the multitasking, the multi-passions, those kinds of things. And I know you've done drag, you've done like acting, you talked
Mm-hmm.
about vocal work, like so
Mm-hmm.
you're a coach, you know, you're very much a manifesting generator from my observation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the 5-1 and the 4-6 are our profile, which Ra, the founder of human design, called the costume of your purpose, which doesn't
Mm.
mean it's your purpose so much. It's more about how you approach your purpose in life. So as a 4-6, you're here more to learn personal lessons,
Mm.
you know, in this lifetime. And the four is the four lines are what we call the opportunists. They have a large
Mm.
network. They build a network of people, and they're really designed to have a huge impact on people who are in their network. They
Mm.
are natural salespeople. They match people to what they need, and they match people to each other, but within their network. Whereas a
Mm-hmm.
five, so I'll talk about the six in a minute. Whereas like my first line is a five, so that actually makes my like biggest lessons in this life are here to be learned from my relationships with other people. They're all transpersonal in nature,
Mm.
and fives, rather than having a big network, we're more meant to be strangers of consequence. So we have impact on people who maybe don't know us as well, come into our lives for a while. We kind of guide them through something, and then they kind of go their own way. And so
Mm.
we're more strangers of consequence. So it's a very different kind of way that we operate with others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have a six line, which the six lines, those people typically live their life in three phases. So up until about age 29, they start out as what we living their life as a three line, which they're designed to learn through trial and error. They kind of
Mm-hmm.
have this sort of chaotic process where they just let life bump into them and they learn from what works and what doesn't. We always say for a three line, there's no such thing as failure. There's just what was learned in the
Mm.
process.
Mm.
And then at 29, when their Saturn return occurs, they tend to withdraw a little bit. They turn inward to kind of
Mm.
integrate all of that. And then their
Mm.
Chiron return triggers their re-engagement. And at
Mm.
their re-engagement, six lines purpose is to live as as a role model to the world of what it means to be a nine-centered energetic being. So
Mm,
they're really like then stepping into that like role model
mm,
piece. My second line's a one line, which is the investigator. So they're the people who
mm,
love to research and learn and just always want to feel certain about their body of knowledge. And so,
mm,
and that's really like, I love to read, I love to learn new things, take
mm.
classes, so it really fits with who I am. So
Very cool. Thank you so much for
yeah.
sharing that. Yeah, I'm 47. I'll be turning 48 in January. So my Chiron's approaching, and I'm so curious what that's going to look like for me in my human design. All the other stuff super resonates for me. And so I realized that we jumped into talking about human design without me introducing it. Do you want to share a little bit about what it is? I've talked about it on the podcast once or twice before, but what it is and also what you do with it to support your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So human design is a revealed system. It was revealed to Ra Uru in 1987, and it's a synthetic blend of astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, and the chakras. And it basically says we're nine energy centered beings as opposed to the seven in the chakras. And using your birth information, human design creates like basically a map of your energetic being, what Ra called the vessel. And your vessel is more than just your physical form. It's also your energetic form. And it's also like it's this whole life in a way is your vessel because it's all about
Mm,
the opportunities and the people and the things that come in and out of your life that are driving you towards your purpose. Yeah, so you think of your vessel as like the car that's driving you towards whatever you're meant to do here in this life and what you're meant to learn in this incarnation. And so
hmm
that's your vessel. So it's bigger than just the body, but human design, then based on that blueprint, helps you understand what is authentically you at your foundation and how are you conditioned by the energy of other people so that you can strip away all the pieces that aren't you and really
hmm
always come back to that like keystone of like, this is who I am at my root. So, and then the way I use it is I'm a human design coach. So I primarily use it in my coaching work. I do specific human design coaching. So people who want to really learn to experiment with their design and use it to maximize the work that they're doing, will
hmm
work through their design and find things in their design that they can use to overcome life challenges.
mm,
So, I used to do more like human design readings, just helping people understand their chart, but
hmm
got kind of bored of that. So now I
mm.
mostly like work with people who have been around human design enough to know that they really want to use it as a tool and then coach
Nice.
them on how to optimize that.
Nice. And folks can go online and get their human design pretty easily for free to just start to explore it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to geneticmatrix.com and they offer a free chart. So you can
Nice.
get it there and explore. I do still do foundation readings as part of my coaching for people who are brand new to human design. I'll get them
Cool.
started and then they can choose to continue the work with me. I'm
Cool.
hoping later this year or early next year to launch a group coaching program around like integrating human design. So
Fabulous. Ooh, that sounds really juicy. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that and for all the wisdom that you've shared throughout this conversation today. I've really enjoyed dropping in with you. Any final thoughts or words you want to share for the listeners?
final words. It always feels like a high pressure moment, right? You want to sound really profound to the end of
No,
the
just anything that's on your
podcast.
heart in this
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
No, I just yeah. So I just think really it's everything that we've talked about today is just really about embracing all of who you are and just
Hmm
showing yourself that grace and that love. It's all, you know, it's all got to start from self-love first.
hmm
And then if you want to really have love out in the world, you got to love yourself first.
Yes, amen. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Julian. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.